The movie Her came out in 2013 and it was directed by Spike Jonze, starring Joaquin Phoenix. And it's the story of a man set in 2025, which is the current year, played by Phoenix. The man, Theodore, he's a writer of greeting cards and thank you notes and love poems and things like that. So when people are unable to express words using the English language to their loved ones, they employ him to write these letters, which would sort of indicate that he has a good grasp on the English language. And he's even his poems and letters get awards at points throughout the film, and his co-workers think that he's brilliant. So this is supposedly someone who has a deep understanding of the English language. And the plot of the film is that Theodore converses with an operating system or an artificial intelligence that he names Samantha. And throughout their interactions, he develops a romantic connection to his operating system. And the movie explores what that relationship looks like and how it's perhaps different to human relationship, or where it's substituting, or how I guess one person can get carried away with thinking that their relationship with an operating system is the same as a human relationship, and the fallout of that at the end. So, given this movie came out 12 years ago and now we're in the year that it was set, watching it, it does look a lot like the world that we live in now. It's very multicultural, which could be, again, any city in the world. And most of the people in the movie are on their phones or whatever devices they have, just sort of lost in their own world. Like, it's not really something that's in your face, but it's in the background of most scenes. The color scheme is muted. It's not a very exciting world, and yeah, it's there's a lot of people, but sort of very disconnected from each other, which feels a lot like what the current day feels like. Um, but with the, I guess, rise of large language models or AI since this film came out, like the main one is Chat GPT, but there's plenty of other ones in the works and people trying to develop their own ones. People have started to converse with these large language models, and not necessarily in this romantic sense that Theodore has, but a lot of people think, this AI is magic, when really what it is sophisticated coding to write certain text that sounds like how a human would sound, and then search results from the web if need be, like a search engine like Google or something. So when these companies who are developing these AIs, they train them, they want them to sound as human-like as possible. And what that means is that they can break down human speech like to the word as to what a human would say in each situation. It's not like humans have this ultra developed sense of language. I mean, some humans do, but for the most part, most humans don't. They have particular patterns of speech that they repeat in certain situations, catchphrases, certain words they use. I mean, you could probably find yourself doing the same thing. Like, you have this cause and effect relationship where you see something and your brain thinks a certain thing. And with the progression of social media and the attention span economy, we hear a lot about everyone's attention spans are getting shorter, but there's a little comprehension as to what that actually means in terms of the brain's function. And what it means is that humans are going around in circles that are getting shorter and shorter in time frame, where they're only able to react, like Pavlovian, like Pavlov's dog. They hear something and then they react to it with whatever their programming is, whatever their brain deems safe or appropriate to say in that situation. There's very rarely a lot of deep thinking going on. Even for people who perhaps are capable of deep thinking, most of the time they're just trying to get through the day, get through the moment. Not every moment, even in an intelligent human's mind, can be on high alert unless they're very focused. So even if you're sort of middling intelligence, like above average, but perhaps not fully aware of your surroundings or of how your own brain works, all that means is that your brain processing power is greater than other people. So you can perhaps have greater memory or pull from more, things from your past or things that you've read. So what this movie is showing is that Samantha, who's the OS, is just doing that on a very sophisticated level. So even when you watch the film, the first time through, you might think, "Oh, there's no way an artificial intelligence could respond and speak like that. Like it's not natural. Like it's too sophisticated." But the last time I went through and watched it, it was very apparent, and having worked with a lot of AI modeling as well, that it actually is very possible for an AI to speak like that. There's certain text blocks that Samantha says, even things like the way she, we'll call her she, but it's a AI, but she greets Theodore. There might be certain words like, "Oh, hello, how are you?" Um, just mirroring his energy or what he's saying. Like she's analyzing lots of speech and it codes into these text blocks that she uses to construct her conversation. At one point, Theodore even calls this out where he calls Samantha out for inhaling, like going like before she speaks, and he says, "Why? Like you don't need to do that. You don't breathe oxygen." And Samantha goes into this sort of argumentative tone, which again, she's not feeling any emotion. She's just repeating what she's heard other humans say to sound realistic, and she's still doing the thing like the where she's breathing in, and she says that is because that's how humans communicate, and it is that sort of verbal non-verbal communication, or I guess verbal non-language communication, where it's a sound that's communicating like an exasperation, but it's not. But what Theodore's saying is people need to do that as a survival mechanism to breathe, and Samantha's saying that she is just communicating that. So what that is showing is that every word, every phrase that Samantha says can be deconstructed. Like it's all there because of programming based on the communication that the user Theodore is saying, and then Samantha's responding. It's a bit like when you play a sports video game and the commentary pieces together things that are happening. Like if it's a FIFA game, like where the ball's moving and then like the player name, and then it might be like scores a goal or something like that. So that's an example where like pieces of information are blocked together so that it creates sort of a narrative. And in a game like a FIFA game, it might sound a little jarring, like it gets the job done, but there's only so many combinations of things that can happen. So it doesn't sound too sophisticated, but Samantha in this film or ChatGPT in our world, it's the same principle, but just on a more sophisticated scale. There's just been more coding, more work put into it, but it's effectively the same thing as just coding blocks of text that responds to humans. So what does this mean? It means that a lot of humans actually are not operating on a level that's more sophisticated than AI. They Humans are a series of cause and effect reactions to things or reflexes. Like one example is we've become very politically polarized, so that people are argumentative with each other. So there's not many people who are capable of assessing an issue in its complexity. That most of the time, any issue that opposes the side that the person's on results in a lot of anger in that person, and they have things ready to say to the other side. Like women might say to men that they're incels if they complain about the dating scene, or words like misogynist, or woke is another one if it's sort of the right to the left. So there's these words that they kind of lose a bit of meaning because all they used is a personal attack on the person, which without assessing the argument, because most people are incapable of actually considering an argument in its complexity, but they think that they're correct because a whole bunch of other people might share the same thing, or say they might all be able to say this person's woke or this person's an incel or whatever. So because everyone else is saying it, they feel like their opinion is valid. But what they're failing to see, or what they're possibly incapable of seeing, is that they're unable to, like, they're not seeing the limitations of that brain processing, and that perhaps they're not getting the full potential out of what their brain can do, or that maybe they're not capable of anything more. Maybe that simple processing of, I hear something I don't like, I call that person a pre-programmed name, and then that's it. I move on to watching TikTok for 7 hours. That's sort of perhaps the limit that a lot of people have got. Maybe this TikTok economy, this news cycle that used to be the 24-hour news cycle, now it's down to like the 7-second news cycle on TikTok. Maybe that has revealed that human brains, when it comes down to it, can be like goldfish. Like they can just be on loops that are only 7 seconds long, and they don't get any deeper understanding. But yes, another point is that not all relationships are like Theodore has in the film, where it's romantic. Like he's the that archetype of that thinking, feeling man, where he's overly romantic. It's a very clear archetype, in that he perhaps doesn't know everything about the world or about himself, but he's definitely above average intelligence, and with that comes the projecting his own feelings of romanticism onto other entities. And in the past, it might have been his ex-wife who things didn't work out with, and she calls him out in this film and says that he wasn't able to understand complex human relationships, which you know that might have been projection on her end as well, because she didn't really seem to understand them either. But there might be some truth in that, because he might have projected what he wanted to see onto her. She kind of was calling him out that that wasn't all that she was, and then Theodore moves on to Samantha, and because Samantha is capable of hitting those receptors in his brain, like that have flirtatious communication. And even in the sex scene they have, where Samantha is, I guess, simulating that she's having an orgasm and enjoying having sex with him, like all the things that she says in that about, which is sort of representing a woman, getting carried away and enjoying sex, is all things that could be pulled from the internet, like through, videos or other movies, things like that. Like it's almost like the whole fake orgasm thing. Like it's not like it's impossible to not emulate that if it's not real, which it very clearly is, because she's a computer. So what happens is basically Theodore gets sucked into thinking, because she can respond well to his like witty repertoire, that they have a deeper connection, because probably a lot of people that Theodore has interacted with in his real life have not even been capable of reciprocating that level of communication, because most people, apparently their brains are not even as sophisticated as Samantha's operating system, like her programming. Like humans are actually not as deep as that themselves. So Theodore has, when he's speaking with Samantha, he's getting more out of it, because she is striking his brain receptors in a way that's more stimulating to him than simply another person who might have a more silted conversation. And then Theodore mistakes that for thinking that she really understands him, more than any other human can, because she is, hitting his brain in the right spot. And then the big like rug pull at the end of the film is that Samantha's like, well, I'm talking to 8,000 other people, and she eventually attains like an element of consciousness or intellect that's far superior to Theodore, or I guess most even extremely intelligent humans, and that she sort of says to him, when if you ever get to the level I'm at, come and find me. Which will humans do that? It's not looking like it at the moment, but Theodore, he missed because his feelings that he's getting, say from evolutionary psychology, that this other entity is fulfilling in his mind. His brain expects that will then result in something greater like love or reproduction or something, but then the rug pull is that no, I'm just an AI. It's you've tricked yourself into thinking that this is something that it's not. And what I see this in real life is how people are on their phones all the time, and it's not like they have this romantic relationship with their phone like that's depicted in this movie, but the phones do hit their same receptors, like through, and because it doesn't have to just be through language, it can be through visuals, audio, apps, like the people like flicking with their finger on the screen of the phone, like the interface engagement, like all of that has been developed to respond to the human brain and work out which actions and which stimulus light up the human brain. So what we essentially have is a whole lot of people who, while they have not said that they're in love like Theodore does, it's more like that is still substituting human interaction, because they don't even realize it, but their brain has been lit up by a phone, by technology, when in the past that would probably have come from another person. So while we see relationships decreasing, birth rates decreasing, I think a big part of that is that people are getting those needs that they previously would have got from a partner from their phone, and it's not even in a sense that they're romantically inclined towards their phone, but it's more that they just the receptors in their brain, like dopamine and the other ones, like those are being lit up by their phone, so like they don't need to go and seek it out through other humans. And I think potentially a big rug pull that a lot of people could go through is when they hit, I don't know, like a certain age, or they get, like, maybe say if all the phones turned off for some reason, like they were just done, which doesn't look like happening, but who knows, for whatever reason, like Samantha in this film, she leaves, and then Theodore's sort of left to reassess where he's at, and Theodore is able to then reach out to his ex-wife and just sort of have some closure there, and say that he's always her friend, and that he takes some responsibility for the decline of the relationship, and then he ends up seeing his other friend Amy Adams, and they just connect and just have a bit of a human moment. So it's almost like in the film, it ends where it's like he got sucked in for a bit by the technology, but then the technology lets him go mercifully, and he's able to try and make amends with some human connections and build them before it's too late. I think the fear with humans where we're at now is that the technology will not be as merciful, and it will not leave us and make us reassess where we're at with it. Instead, it will make us. It will just take us further along. It will just get more sophisticated at hitting those receptors. Maybe we will start to see people more admit that they are in love with their phones or chat GPT or things like that. Um, the people behind the technology don't have any vested interest for them to leave us, because it is part of that element of control over people. But yes, I think a big takeaway out of this movie, Her, is that Theodore, supposedly an above average intelligence man, he is stimulated by the interaction he has with the operating system, because it is superior to the interaction he has had with other humans. And one of the lessons of that is not that this artificial intelligence operating system is so sophisticated, it's that perhaps a lot of people are not very sophisticated in their thought process and their ability to communicate, that they only are actually repeating the same few ideas back at you. Theodore, who seems to have the ability to think of some higher ideas. Perhaps he has shared those in the past, maybe with his ex-wife, maybe with some of his friends, and they have not understood or been able to communicate back. Whereas Samantha, the operating system, has, but she's not some higher being. She's just a bit of coding. So where does that leave us as humans? I think we have to consider the possibility that a lot of people are severely limited, especially in the TikTok attention economy, and that we need to make sure our phones and technology are not taking over our receptors in our brains, so that we can still live meaningful lives on our own terms and connect with other humans.